Good afternoon and welcome to this week's Marketing Gem. This week we're talking about how to stand out from the crowd. Many people run small independent businesses nowadays and it often makes them a good living. They often trade or advise on things like financial products, utilities, even heating systems and so on and so forth. But how could they differentiate themselves from similar businesses often selling the same or similar products whilst remaining within the franchisor's brand and communications guidelines and policies? While this can often lead to a good income and lifestyle for the independent trader, it can also lead to a lot of resentment by a few as the promised rewards fail to arrive due to stiff competition from local competitors. So how and why should a small business go into a brand, promote and differentiate itself whilst remaining within the franchisor's brand and communications guidelines and policies? To discuss this issue, I'm joined today by three of our regulars. First of all, Catherine Baldwin. Hi, Catherine. Welcome back.
Oh, yes. Thanks for having me on. Good to be here again. Looking forward to chatting about this interesting subject.
Okay. And we also have Kevin Lynch on. Hi, Kevin.
Hi, Diane. Thanks for having me on. Looking forward to talk about this subject because many years I worked with franchisees to deliver really first-class products and services throughout most of the world. So meat and drink to me.
Okay, sounds great. And Jonathan, I'm sure you've come across this kind of scenario in the past with your wide range of advertising experience.
In fairness, my experience would be more from the franchisor position, the franchisee. In other words, I would be looking after the McDonald's from on high rather than the McDonald's on the high street. So it'll be interesting to have the discussion. But thank you for inviting us.
Okay, it should be a really interesting discussion. If you want to join in, then please contact us on the at the Marketing Gem on Twitter. That's at the Marketing Gem on Twitter, and we'll be grateful to take your comments and answer them if we can. Jonathan, are we just talking about how to differentiate your business communications within strict brand communications and operational guidelines laid down by the franchisor and or the regulator, or is there more to it than that?
I think there's very likely to be more to it than that. But essentially, we're saying, how do we stand out in a crowd when basically we're all wearing exactly the same suit? It doesn't matter in terms of the general public view looking in to a lot of these businesses. Is it's part of a big corporation? It's a Costa Coffee, it's a McDonald's, it's something like that. But actually, there are an awful lot of franchisees or franchisee relationships that aren't high street brands, that are things that are going on where the back office is run by the franchisor, and actually it's the one-to-one communication that can be a point of differentiation. But essentially, I think this discussion is about differentiating the quality of service and the quality of the product that the consumer experiences. Well, that's going to be my perception. I'll let the others put their points forward.
Okay, Kevin.
Yeah, my background is similar to Jonathan in that I worked for a very large corporation, and most people would have assumed that it's an asymmetrical power relationship, but the best franchisees and franchisors really work in partners, and that's why we call these people partners. So we had different partners for different sorts of situations. At the end of the day, if we have a very large customer in somewhere like Kyrgyzstan, there's no way that we can directly help that customer. It's just not sustainable. Whereas when we have a partner who's using our brand as part of their sales thing, they're working with our marketing department, that's quite successful. So in the franchise relationship, the best franchisees come to the franchisor with really good ideas, and I certainly know that some of our innovative partners, they were people that they did road shows around their territories, asked us to send people there. We in turn sort of partnered with them, and we expanded that idea to do out across our whole territory, and the people that helped pilot that through, they certainly got recognition for the good work they did there.
Okay. Catherine, in our world, actually being a franchisee is not that uncommon, is it? With lots of these kind of multiple print shops actually being run as a franchise for a much bigger organisation.
Yes, I mean, I can think of two straight away. There was some of us here know Priscilla at Minuteman Press. That's a franchise just off Watford High Street, St Albans Road area, and he seems to be quite a successful one. And I'll come back to why I think that is in a moment. There was another franchise which was printing.com, which was run by a friend of mine in St Albans Road as well. Didn't do quite so well. He did struggle with trying to compete in the market. I mean, Watford particularly is full of printers and print shops, as well as, of course, all the online opportunities for printing as well. So there's a huge range of competition for somebody running a franchise operation in print, in particular, because that's what I know about. My background is design and print, but he struggled, I know, with things like trying to give the best deals when he knew that people could look in so many other places to get those similar sorts of deals. But I think where Priscilla actually does a really good job at Minuteman Press is the personal side of things, and I think that's something that a franchisee can offer, particularly in a local setting for a small business. You can bring something to it that's localized, so you can get to know your customers, you can offer loyalties, you can offer specific offers which target the sorts of needs that they have, and I think that makes it much more of a personal approach, and that's what will keep people coming back. I mean, there's all sorts of franchise operations around here. I know cleaning companies and hairdressers, hair salons, gardening companies, all sorts of companies. And I think where they have a personal touch and you build a personal client base and you get to know people, then I think that really helps in that sort of situation.
Yes, I mean, sometimes, Jonathan, you can sort of like buy an exclusion clause, can't you? So that you buy a geographic region, such as, say, a WP or HP postcode or something like that. But other times, that kind of exclusivity, geographic exclusivity, isn't in the running at all, is it? So how would you start to distinguish yourself then? Is it more than personal service?
Well, personal service is the best place to start. I mean, you are there. Effectively, you want to be the strongest local exemplar or representative of that brand. So if you've got a public-facing franchise in any way, shape or form, make sure that your staff training is as good as it can be. Make sure that they're very well motivated and they fully understand what they are delivering. The customer experience is, in this situation, key, because the product actually that you're delivering will be the same product everywhere. So it's actually that personal relationship primarily is what you can control. The other aspect of what you can control, and I think this is where this conversation came from yesterday and in previous occasions, is making your presence consistent, not just at the point of access, at the touch point of the consumer, en masse, but things like business cards, letterheads, all those other little touch points that everyone forgets about, what Pedigree used to refer to as presence marketing. Even the way that people answer the telephones has got to be consistent. It's got to be polite, respectful, engaging, helpful, all of those adjectives. So that's a very important part of how you do it. But it's largely based on the personal touch. Kevin's already touched on the other side of it, which is don't let the franchisor manage you. It's a two-way relationship. Manage the franchise. Get them to give you additional publicity and marketing from their overall budget. Because in a lot of cases, it's the marketing and the back office that they pay for, or effectively you pay for by subscribing to their franchise.
Yeah, I mean, that's quite important, isn't it, that relationship that you alluded to earlier, Kevin?
Yeah, and it's about when it works at its best, it's about getting it's about getting the people working together. Um, I mean, the world of franchising. I mean, at the end of the day, you need to understand what am I? I'm paying money to the franchisor, or they're taking a cut from my revenue or whatever. What am I actually getting for that? And is that fair? I mean, there was a chap came along to me on one occasion, and he was a driving instructor, and he was saying, I want to go with a particular well-known brand, but they want to charge me £25,000. And I said, well, fine, but what are they actually going to do for the £25,000? And he was kind of at a loss. So I said to him, well, this is clearly a case where you can build your own brand. You can take £5,000, and I guarantee you can reach every candidate learner in the area with a message for the 5,000. So be clear about what's happening on both sides of the relationship. At the end of the day, one of the constraints that you have is the franchisor is very nervous when people are excuse me, breaking their guidelines and stuff, because potentially, they have to be an honest cop. They have to treat you, the franchisee, the same as they treat other franchisees in the same situation. So it's always a conversation and a negotiation.
So what about online? Quite often you have a local site for your own independent kind of mini franchise, mini business, but it's often constrained by what's happening by the national agreements and things like that, isn't it? So it's a case of, well, if you Google in ABC savememoney.co.com, whatever it is, money saving, whatever, you need to be able to make sure that your name appears at the top, isn't it? So how can you do that as a small independent franchisee?
I'll pick that one. That one is quite complicated. So at the beginning, and certainly some of the people I've been talking to, the first thing you have to understand is you've got to have your personal brand. Okay, so you need to have a file with your photographs that you're using, the anecdotes that you're using, testimonials. That stuff is the core of your personal brand. Quite often franchisees are partners with their spouse, so your spouse also, you should have something similar about that if they're active in the business. Excuse me, I seem to have frog my throat today. You then build that stuff up so you have your personal brand, because the franchise may not last forever, so you need to make sure that you have maintained your personal equity back in your professional life. Once you've got your own personal branding and stuff and decided how you're using that then you can then take that to your own personal website, and then your personal website then points to the thing that is compliant with the franchise agreement, and you try and customize the look and feel of both those things that come together. You're never going to win the top search categories because people are usually running paid for search on those categories, and you don't want to necessarily get involved in a bidding war. But if when people are there, so that's where your personal brand is coming out, how you're doing your outreach. So for example, if you're on the radio or something, you say and you want to find out more, Google or search online for Kevin Lynch Subway or whatever, and that then will direct people to your sort of franchise. That's the organic way of doing it. I mean, there are people that will advertise shortcuts and so on, but those shortcuts will eventually lead you to problems that if you do the right thing and go for the organic growth, you'll be in a strong position.
I think you're right, Kevin. I think there needs to be an association between what you're doing personally and what you're doing with the brand, with the franchise. Sorry, but it can cause conflict if you can't find a way of doing things differently from one to the other. What I mean by that is, again, going back to my example of a friend who was running the printing.com. He was running a printing business side by side to the franchise, and whilst the one would drive traffic to the franchise, it was very difficult to differentiate the two. And as a consumer, it's very difficult to decide, well, which one do I go with? Do I go with him on his personal site? Do I go with the franchise? Which one's cheaper? And then you're playing this comparison game the whole time, and you're doing that with other printing companies as well. So it becomes almost like an extra step for consumers. Which one shall I go with, him or the franchise? So it is a difficult thing unless you're actually going to offer something different to what you're doing with the franchise. It can become quite complicated. I can see it being a headache for some people to be running the two. But you're right, if the franchise doesn't work out, you want something else to fall back on. You need that to be your own personal company or business or whatever as well. So it can be a conflict. It can be very difficult to separate the two and at the same time to drive traffic from one to the other. So yeah, it needs a bit of getting your head around.
Jonathan,
I think this is one of those areas you need to proceed with caution. You must always remain, if you like, have your autonomous brand, which is able to support you, because you may quite rightly choose to step away from one franchise organisation and go to a similar one, but you want to have the portability. The other thing is, increasingly with the sorts of people who run franchises, is that they actually have, if you like, a portfolio career. So their personal brand might actually have to be an umbrella for 3, 4 different franchises. So there is a method for management where you have to differentiate between them. But Kevin is absolutely right that you want to retain control over you as a brand, as well as comply with everything that comes with the franchise. But you need to retain independence, autonomy, and portability to be able to move on in your own sphere without having to worry about what you paid to get involved with. And I think that's a very sort of good cautionary tale. And sometimes things happen at the corporate level with a franchise that you fundamentally disagree with. Equally, franchises have to evolve with the environment they're working in. I can remember years ago, I seem to remember you used to be able to effectively buy a Costa franchise for a designated area. It was very expensive, but virtually everyone who bought into it got what they wanted. But since every Tesco's has got a Costa, virtually every other petrol station has a Costa machine, that geographic exclusivity has obviously had to be amended. Now, it may have been got round by making each of those Tesco and, let's say, petrol station Costa outlets may be owned by the holding company for Costa and therefore are not franchise. They are, if you like, corporate. But it still is a fairly fundamental change to the way that people who bought the franchise in the first place probably understood where they were when they got involved. And it's an evolving market. It's been incredibly successful, and I think it's been incredibly successful for everyone involved. But they've had to grow, they've had to change, and perhaps some of the people who got in the early days have said, well, this isn't the way I want to conduct a franchise, I'll go and look for another opportunity. So that is a very important part of being your own boss and being able to pick and choose. Don't just sort of sit there and allow the big corporation to tell you exactly what you do. Hence our remarks earlier on about going to the people who manage the franchise and putting forward suggestions. Everyone's ultimate gain comes from the franchise in total, as well as your local or your regional example of it being a success. And that's the major benefit of buying into it, is that when there's a big promotion, it goes out on the most effective media. It goes into the most expensive, things that you couldn't, on an individual basis, afford to support happen because you bought into the bigger model. So there are a lot of benefits involved in being there, but don't be scared of the size of the organisation that you're dealing with.
Absolutely, and I think you need to find a bit of a unique thing that makes you stand out as well. You know, I was going back to, we mentioned McDonald's already, and you know, if you sort of think, well, you know, with McDonald's on every corner of every high street, how can there be room for any other burger joint? But actually there are. They've all got their own particular areas of expertise. You know, so there's room in the market for more if you offer something a little bit different. I was just thinking of Wendy's, which you know, you've got McDonald's and Burger King that offer you know, attractive to kids cartoon characters and the family meal. Wendy's offer the authentic burger. I can't remember their slogan off the top of my head, but they offer something slightly different. And I think finding a niche within a sea of people doing similar things to you is quite important as well. Find you know, find your own particular uniqueness and trying to capitalise on that. Offer something that's different to the others.
Jonathan, what's the role of social media play?
An enormous role, particularly if you're sort of trying to make yourself the most powerful exemplar of a brand within your local area. Certainly, I mean, you know, so you could take the fast food business analogy quite a long way, but we won't. If you're the printing company, if you're the service provider, if you're the organisation that's getting someone energy for half price or whatever it is that your product is, find out effectively what your USP is. Use social media to drive things like endorsement, you know, personal endorsement. This person saved my business £1,000 a year. This person saved my grandmother £300 a year. Whatever it is, and as long as it's genuine and, you know, it fits within the franchise agreements in terms of what you're allowed to do and what you're allowed to say it. You know, or if it doesn't fit and you want to do it, go to the people who manage the franchise and sell it to them. Get the idea put through. If it works for you and it works for the franchise, yes, obviously other people are going to get on the bandwagon. But you're the first mover, you've got in there, you'll have better experience and more knowledge for how to make it work for you.
Kevin, do you have any more thoughts on this particular subject? Because it came, I mean, we started this because of the discussion that you were having the other day with someone. So, you know, what else can people do to sort of like operate within the franchise and yet at the same time be seen as independent and having their own personal brand as well?
I think that's very much part of being, you know, going into this thing with eyes wide open. You know, look at people who've been long-term franchisees. So, for example, Wickham near me, they have a very large shopping centre in the centre of town, and they had an Apple store in the shopping centre, but it was actually a franchise business. When the shopping centre first opened in 2009, they had a lot of foot flow to the business, but then when Apple put the Apple Genius Thing store in Watford, you know, they immediately their business immediately changed its character, and they actually changed their signage and stuff, and they still had the Apple logo, but at this point they were just a high-end devices, headphones, speakers, TVs kind of store, because sort of the technology and the market had changed by the big franchisor. So you really, you know, and you know, Jonathan's example of Costa, where Costa are extending the brand. You know, you thought you had an exclusive license for Costa for HP5, 3A to Z or whatever, and it turns out there's 3 Costa outlet little machines in various newsagents. Did you do your research properly? Did you understand that what you have is a license for a store, but that in no way constrains Costa from putting it in garages and other so on and so on? This stuff is not for the naive. The standard advice I see is, talk to a lawyer with commercial experience. And that's quite expensive. Next best thing, talk to the other franchisees. I mean, do be aware that they have a vested interest in you taking out the franchise as well. But ask them about their experiences. What did they think was good? What can be improved? And things like that. And talk to people that have run other franchises. As far as I can see, sort of everybody has some experience of this franchise selling and the network marketing. And one of the things, another friend was sort of saying, "Oh, I'm really very excited about this," and I said, "Well, the thing I find about it is that after 3 years, a lot of people kind of go, oh, I wish I'd never touched it." And the reason they're saying I wish I never touched it was they just naively jumped in without asking critical questions. But if you ask the right questions, you find a great product or service, you can work innovatively with the franchisor, there's trust and respect on both sides of the agreement, then, what's not to love about it?
What's not to love indeed, Catherine?
Yes, quite. Well, what is to love as well? It can be a very exciting and rewarding experience. I would just say, really, try to think what you can do differently. You can be under the umbrella of a franchise, and that's fine. But try to find your own unique take on something as well. To forge yourself locally. Be the best at something. Whether that's the biggest, have the most assortment, be the cheapest, the fastest, the easiest, offer the best service, or be the hottest, trendiest fashion. Do something differently. Stand out from the crowd. I think personally offering the best service is a great one. People like to come back to someone where they know they feel valued. So I would say that's pretty important too. But be the best at something. Remember that the U in USP is unique. Be unique.
Okay. That sounds like your tip of the week, actually.
Leading in nicely.
Yes, thank you for that one. Yes, leading in nicely. I mean, Catherine sort of hinted at what her tip of the week is going to be about being unique and remembering it's you who run the business, be it a coffee store or McDonald's or something else. You're selling a financial service or something like that. What would your tip be, Jonathan?
Well, be unique by all means. The other thing is, like any small business, actually what is most important if you're going to differentiate yourself is your personal reputation. Your local store can be better than other people's. The McDonald's analogy again, the badges with the stars on. One of the badges on the star is how clean do you keep the front of the house. Wouldn't it be nice if Kentucky Fried Chicken actually understood that? Because that might put a lot of people who at the moment are put off going into their franchises into saying, "Oh, I'll give them another chance." It's very important, and it's one of those areas that if you make the consumer experience the best it can be, speed of service used to be a very important differentiator for McDonald's. There was a time when they opened the branches in the West End of London where if you didn't get your order served in 1 minute, you didn't pay for it. That went out a long time ago because it was a very expensive promise to keep. But it did make the point that they were a fast food outlet. Think of the things that you can do to differentiate yourself from the other competition on the high street. Allow the big brand to do the overall sell, but you are responsible for how well your franchise does on the ground. And as we've said, unique is a very key thing in selling your USP. And differentiation is how you find, if you like, what your USP is. Use these tools. Make sure that you stand out from the crowd, as we said at the very beginning of the whole talk. I'm just trying to think. I think I've covered off most of the key things I would have said. Tip of the week: push the franchisor agreement as far as you can, and try and negotiate further steps, particularly as you can see that there is a benefit to the overall franchise. So, I will be the pathfinder. We will try out new ideas here, and those that work can then be rolled out across the rest of the franchise.
Okay. Kevin, what would be your tip on franchising?
My tip on franchising is really, do your research, understand the territory, understand the product, understand the value of the market you're serving, understanding the margin that you're going to accept, and approach the matter with your eyes wide open. But for example, be aware that if you've under your contract committed to buy water exclusively from your franchisor, and you start selling a brand of water that is you picked up in a cash and carry, that's just going to make the whole thing go horribly, horribly wrong. They're not going to detect when you've sold one bottle of water, but they're certainly going to notice when and they spend a lot of people on the back office, and they analyze trends and stuff, and they'll notice that when you for the proportion of the revenue you sell a fraction of the water that the other stores sell, then questions are going to be asked and visits to your store are going to be made. So understand that you're entering into a partnership agreement. It's a bit like getting married to someone. It looks good on the outside. You don't necessarily going to know what you're going to get once you're committed, but all you can do is do your research. So that's my tip of the week, really.
Okay, that's great. And as I said, each week we ask members of the team to come up with a general marketing tip as well as their tip on the topic that we're talking about. But before I do that, I'd just like to remind you, you're watching Link for Growth TV, and you can get in touch with us if you have any questions via Twitter at the Marketing Gem. That's Twitter on the at the Marketing Gem. Kevin, I'll come straight back to you. What would be your general tip of the week? Something that's topical or something you've seen that you think, oh yeah, actually that'd be a really good tip to pass on.
Apropos ongoing topic of trust, it's about the iOS upgrade with yields a brick, an error 53. So just the background on that, Apple's latest iPhones, they have a fingerprint reader. It's deemed to be a secure system. And consequently, if the phone detects that it's been tampered with, what it currently does is just become a brick inert. The reasoning being that people could perpetrate fraud through inserting bogus fingerprint readers and things like that in the device. Anyway, the policy seems a little bit reckless. It's getting a lot of traction. I see a UK barrister has said that Apple's policy could be considered criminal damage. So that's one at this point that makes me glad I'm on Android. Not that Google would be much different, but now that this is broken for Apple, they're never going to do that stuff. I mean, the acceptable mode of failure would have been to say your fingerprint reader is not trusted. It's not trusted, but you can still use it locally on your device, but we won't let you do the transactions. So yeah, I think they've done a lot to erode user trust. And the way you address this problem is you return your phone to Apple and you pay apparently a charge currently of £256 odd. So that's good for trust, isn't it?
Catherine, what's
Yes. Can I comment briefly on the Apple thing?
I was thinking of introducing you as the Apple lover.
Well, I read all about this as well, and you're right, there are some lawyers and barristers getting on the case now, and absolutely rightly so. What Apple are trying to do basically is say that you know, buy one of our phones, but never let anybody other than an Apple dealer repair it, which is wrong. You know, they can't do that. And you're right, it should be sorted out. But if you have an Apple Care policy and it's always repaired by Apple, actually the fingerprinting thing is absolutely fine. It's only an issue if it's ever been touch repaired or whatever by somebody who isn't Apple. But it is a huge, huge issue, and really quite a shock to a lot of people. We really weren't expecting that. But that aside, I was going to say, really, a lot of my comments have come today from an article in Entrepreneur Online magazine, and it was all about making your franchise stand out. So I was going to post the link to that online after the show. It's actually a really good read, and it covers a lot of what we've talked about today, including you know, finding your unique standout in the franchise that you're dealing with. But it's a good read, so I'll post that up. The only other thing I was going to do very, very blatantly was to plug something that I've just got involved with. The Marketing Gem is all about small, medium enterprises. I've just clubbed together with 2 other small companies, and we've put together Online Startup Design. Now, this is an umbrella organisation that basically will project manage anybody who's starting up in business, anybody who wants to revamp their business or rebrand, and it covers everything you can possibly need, from website design, content management, blogs, through to the printing side of things, graphic design, which is obviously my thing. So I've teamed up with Philip King, he's a member of Leap for Growth, and Joe Murricane, who's a content writer, to bring this service to anybody that needs it. So if you're thinking of starting up in business, or you're thinking of a rebrand of some sort, get in touch. I'll post that link up at the end of the show as well.
Okay. Jonathan, what would be your tip of the week?
I think my tip of the week grows out of something very pertinent that Kevin actually said earlier on about get professional advice, particularly on the contract, with any kind of supplier, but if you're getting into franchise and things like that, and make sure that you use, let's say, legal advice. Make sure that the person you use has got lots of franchise, contract, legal experience. Don't just go to your family solicitor, because frankly, apart from doing 1 or 2 things like making sure your dog is looked after and you will, he's pretty useless for anything else. And by and large, when it comes, you know, push comes to shove, he'll go and talk to someone who's an expert in their field. Well, you can do that. Choose your advisors very carefully, particularly if you're moving out of an area where you know what the basic rules of the game are. Make sure you get the best possible advice. Make sure you go and speak to people like your bank manager, because if they're good at what they've done, they will have advisors within their organisation who can talk about the type of business you're going into. Get good financial advice from accountants, not necessarily the accountant you've traditionally used. Yes, you've built up an experience and a relationship with them, but again, there are specialists out there who can help you. You know, if you're spending, I don't know, £250,000, £500,000 buying into a big franchise, don't sort of think about it in a way that you wouldn't go out and buy a £500,000 house and, you know, with borrowed money or your own money, and completely ignore having a survey done or having a reasonably competent lawyer working on your behalf. But one hopes you wouldn't. Why would you do that in business? So, you know, it can be a jungle out there. Do the best you can to protect yourself. You know, sort of, there's that great comment that if you think a professional is expensive, wait until you've used an amateur. Make sure that the professional that you're using is the best professional that you can use.
Okay. Sorry, Jonathan. Did I cut you off? You went quiet.
No, I made my point.
Okay, great. Sorry. You suddenly kind of went quiet. I could see lips moving, but there was absolutely no sound.
If you didn't catch the bit, it was make sure that the professional that you use is the best professional for the job.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And on that note, it's time to say cheerio, and thank you for watching this week's show. If you're interested in getting in touch with us, you can via the Marketing Gem on Twitter. and we'll all be seeing you next week. Okay, thank you, and bye-bye.
Thanks, bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Don't forget to get in touch with us.
Okay, and
Oh, we did. Oh, we didn't.